Go.
And we are live. Welcome back to Honestea Talks. I'm Ranjita Singh.
And I am Ashley Peña.
Woo woo.
Ooh,
And
ooh, ooh.
today, I'm excited for this topic.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me
So the
too.
topic today, not many people get excited about this topic.
No, and I get why, but it's
Yeah.
cool to talk about.
Today's topic is death.
Yes. Dun
And
dun dun.
yeah, dun dun dun. I think it's very important to talk about death
Mhm.
because one, it's not something that gets talked about because most people fear it.
Mhm.
But I think, in my personal opinion, once you accept that it's gonna happen, it's like a huge like stress off your shoulders. Like because
Yeah,
then you can just live life.
for sure. Yeah. And I think it's important also to add to what you said to talk about it because most people only talk about it like in conversation when someone passes and when
Yeah,
someone is or it, when someone is passing. So
yeah,
I think even for me and what I've experienced in my life as far as like losing people, it would have been great to talk about it beforehand and talk about like
yeah,
how to cope with it when you do lose people and also how to live your life without every decision being about fear of essentially dying because a lot of people do live in fear of death and that's understandable and makes sense, but I think a huge part of it is because we don't really talk about it. We don't really, it's like so taboo even though it
yeah.
happens to, it's going to happen to
It's gonna
everybody.
happen to everyone, and
Hmm.
I think also the big takeaway too is that for some reason in our minds as humans, we think that this fleshly body is going to live forever. And it's not. And I think
No.
that's the thing, like, because the reason I picked death as the topic, because it was on our list anyway, but I saw a tweet over the weekend and it said something in regards to like death can go back to hell. And I'm just like, you do understand that's just a part of life,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly, that's such an interesting perspective,
Yeah.
like
So I was just that. So that was in my mind, and then when we were talking about topics, I was like, this would be the topic.
yeah, I love this. I love like all things, all things. Nothing is like really off limits for me. I love just talking about things. And this is something that I do talk about with my loved ones, with those that I have these types of conversations with
Yeah.
because it's something that happens. And something that my mom and I have done too for a while now is talking about like what we want when our body just
Yeah.
is not at the place where it's continuing anymore, right?
Exactly.
And like
Exactly.
what we want to experience, what we have, because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times we don't even get the chance to have that conversation because we just die, we just
Yeah.
pass, and
Yeah.
we don't really like talk about beforehand because there's no, it's not like it's guaranteed that I'll make it till tomorrow. I might not,
Exactly.
right? So it's
Exactly.
like I might think, oh, I'm young and I have a long way to go, but I don't know that for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say I never had the conversation of dying with my loved ones. They're not going to know what I
Exactly.
expect, what I want, what my wishes are, you
Yeah.
know? It's crazy.
So funny you bring that up because so the guest we had last week, Hoyt, this
Hmm.
is something we've talked about, and he actually recently sent me this form that you can fill out. It's called Five Wishes or something like that.
Cool.
And it's a form anyone can fill out and just get notarized. And it's literally whatever your wishes are if in any sudden moment. Um, I mean, because, yeah, like you said, I could walk across the street tomorrow and some drunk driver could hit me
Yeah.
and I'm done. Right.
Yeah.
So tomorrow isn't promised, which is why we all preach, live in the present moment type thing and enjoy what you've got right now. Oh,
Absolutely.
and the other reason that I did want to bring up death is because so you and I both recently had birthdays. So it's like when you're reflecting back on life, it's like, well, okay, if I were to die tomorrow, would I die happy? And I can honestly say yes.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people can't.
Exactly. Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's a hard truth.
Yeah. And I think, there's so many reasons why that is, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that if I do want people to take away the fact that like you don't, a huge wake up call for me was like you don't know if you're going to Like the next moment, like forget the next day. So the next moment isn't promised. Anything could
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
2 seconds from now, and you're not going to be told most of the time, right? Maybe it happens to somebody, but most of the time you're not going to be told like, hey, you know what, tomorrow is your time, so
Yeah.
live today.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that has to be very much a decision of yours to
Mm-hmm.
live as present and as as fulfilled as you can, because you
Yes.
don't know what can happen. You really never know. And
Yeah.
it's also has to do so much with like those that you're surrounded by, those that you care about, having conversations with them, spending time with them, enjoying time with them, because
Mm-hmm.
you really never know when they're not going to be around. And
Exactly.
sometimes you do get a kind of a range of like, okay, they have this much time left, right? But even then, my experience has been that even then you don't know, because
No.
in the situations where we kind of knew it was coming, we still didn't know exactly when, the exact moment. So
Exactly.
it really hits you like out of
I
nowhere.
I when I used to volunteer with hospice, so when people go on hospice, it's usually because they're nearing the end.
Yeah.
And I had a client that I would visit, volunteer with, and she was in hospice for like 3 years.
Wow.
Which that's
Incredible.
usually not the case, but
Wow.
like you said, it's even though you know the end is coming, like you still don't know how long, because that's no doctor can put a timeline on your
No.
death. Only God knows that.
Yeah. Literally.
Only your soul knows that. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's no one else can tell you when you're gonna go.
No. And
No.
and I read somewhere, I don't remember if I read it, saw it, heard it, you know? I don't know, but I somewhere I consumed this person saying that what people are really scared of is not so much the like letting go of this physical body and like
Mm,
passing, but suffering in the meantime of that, right? That a lot
mm,
of people are afraid of suffering that. But something that always reminds me to enjoy and stay present and not essentially be afraid of suffering is the fact that if I'm afraid of suffering, I suffer. You get what
yeah.
I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm afraid of suffering, then the best thing to do is not fear that, like not feed that fear, and just live as abundantly and as joyfully as I can.
It's I believe it was Buddha that said suffering is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You choose, and you just said it perfectly. It's the fear of the suffering that's going to happen, but if you're constantly thinking about the suffering that's going to happen, you're
You're
suffering right
suffering.
now, right?
Yeah,
So it's like,
absolutely.
why put yourself through that when you can just enjoy what you're going through right now,
Oh my gosh, most definitely. Because
right?
it really does take away from your energy. You can't focus on two things at the same time. You can't.
No,
So you're
you've
either,
always told me that. I've always heard you say that. Yeah.
yeah, because it really, whenever I heard that, it really stayed with me, because I was like, that literally means we're so used to multitasking and like
Mm-hmm.
having all these distractions, but you cannot give 100% to two things. You
Yeah.
choose ultimately what you're giving your energy to.
Yeah.
And if you are giving your energy to this fear of suffering, then you are presently suffering.
Yep.
And
Yep.
like you don't, that's not something that you have control of. Like in the future, when and if it comes, that
Mm-hmm.
moment, you suffering right now and replaying it and fearing it is not going to make it go away or make it come
No.
sooner or make it stop. It's just not going to do anything. The only thing that it does is that it causes suffering right now that you
And
don't need
yep.
to
Live
experience.
through. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
my God. Okay. So I know I've had,
excuse me.
well, me and you were living together when I
Hmm.
experienced a death in the family and
Yeah.
the drama that came along with it. So I made sure in those days, I talked to my brother and my dad, like, if I were to go tomorrow, this is what I would want done.
Good.
So for me, and I think it's good, like you said in the beginning, to have healthy conversations with your loved ones so that they have heard it from your own voice that
Hmm.
this is what you want, aside from it being written on something. They've
Exactly.
actually physically heard you, and you were in your right mental state when you were speaking it to them.
Hmm.
Like all those factors play a role.
Definitely.
So for me personally, and I'll say here, now it'll be on public record.
Now you all know
Now
what she
everyone knows.
wants.
I Me and my cousin used to talk. I want a party. I want to be celebrated. So it's not going to be a funeral. It's going to be a celebration of life.
I love it.
Um, I don't want an open casket because I want people to remember me alive. not laying,
Absolutely.
in a casket.
Of course.
And I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes to be mixed in with tree roots and
Oh,
planted.
I love that.
Because
Yes.
I mean, if my body has at this point, it's ash, so
Yeah.
give it back to nature.
I love that. Yes,
Yeah,
life becoming life, new life.
yeah,
I love that
exactly.
so much. Yes. I
So
I
have
love
you ever thought about it, like what you?
yes. Oh my gosh, yes, definitely. Well, one, this is great to talk about, just like we've said, and like you also added to right now. It is really important not only to have in paper, but to let your loved ones know this matters to me. This is
Yeah,
important to me, and this is my wish, right? Like
yeah.
apart from writing it, because sometimes I, just like what you experience, I mean, I've experienced that too with family, and when family members pass away, I feel like family members make it about them,
Yep.
like because they're the ones that are here suffering a loss, which I get,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it's like not you that left, like this person had specific desires, and sometimes our family members make it about what they want and what they feel is
Mhm.
best for their family member. But if they've already communicated that through writing, through communication, then like
Yeah.
you're really gonna go against what they want.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. I've talked to my mom about it. And for me, it's really similar to you. I don't want any of this like funeral traditional, like, oh, come and there's a viewing and there's open casket.
Yeah.
I don't want any of that. Like
Yeah.
I rather just have my mom, if she's alive, if she's doesn't pass before me,
Yeah.
then I would definitely just want to be cremated and put in whatever place allows my body to be used for generating new life and
Mhm.
assisting new life. I don't want a place where people that were there for me and weren't there for me to join together and just cry. Like I definitely don't want that. I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
everyone to grieve in whatever way they feel comfortable with grieving, and to celebrate my life in whatever way they feel comfortable doing. And
Yeah.
then I want my physical body to just be used in whatever way it can be used. And then that's
Yeah.
it, because I'm a gone at that point. Like I'm
Exactly.
like, bye
I
everybody.
like joke. I'm like, I'm gonna haunt your ass if you don't listen to my wishes.
Straight up, for real. My mom says that. Because my mom really was the one that had this conversation started. I remember when I was
Mm.
younger, I wasn't really ready for like the idea of her being gone. Like I
Mhm.
was like, don't talk to me about that. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
What when you die, you're not gonna die, okay?
That's how my mom is when I talk to her about it. So I'm the like calm one, and she don't talk about it. No.
And I get it. I mean, obviously, I've been there, so I get what that's like, because you don't want to hear about the person that you love
Yeah.
dying. Because it wasn't about me. I could talk about what I wanted, but I couldn't hear what she wanted, because I was
Mm.
like, I'm not thinking about that right now. It's too
Yeah.
sensitive for
Yeah.
me. But it's gonna happen. Like it
Yeah.
really, that shift of like, okay, this is gonna happen, and it might be that I don't die before my mom. It might, but it might not be. So
Mhm.
it's important for us to have the conversation. What
Yeah.
does she want? Because if it happens tomorrow and she didn't tell me or she didn't write it down, who's going to take control of that, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And because she has experienced so much, it's lost, and like just so many things in her life, she's like, I don't want
Mhm.
anybody to come view me. I don't want any hypocrisy. I don't want anybody showing up. The people that have been there, they don't even have to go to a funeral. Like I don't want any of that. And she
Yeah.
was very big on making it clear about what she wanted, not only when she passed, but if she was like suffering, if she was in the hospital and or in a critical situation, like those conversations we have definitely had.
Yeah.
And so it allowed me to sit with myself and say like, okay, well, what do I want? Because this is something that's going to happen to me too. And it might happen sooner than later. And if it does, this is what I want. And if it happens later, then fine. But if it happens tomorrow, I still want on record what it is that
Yeah.
I want for myself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Ugh.
Does this bring up any questions for you?
Yeah. So a question that I had, because of course, then I was like, okay, like obviously the physical body dies, but let's talk about what you think about what happens after, because that is
Ah.
another reason
Oh.
why people are afraid. I mean, people that grew up
Excuse me.
being very religious or grew up being taught heavily about religion, it's all about what happens after. Like,
Yeah.
where am I going to go? That's what a lot of people live fearing,
I
unfortunately,
these
because
are
of
the
religion.
conversations I love. Like
I know.
so I Okay, so obviously I'm Indian, so I grew up with Hindu beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ingrained in me. So reincarnation is something we believe in. So in that sense, yes, the soul lives on forever. It comes down, it has these physical um experiences, but when the fleshly body is done with whatever experiences it needed for its soul's growth, then the soul goes back to the creator. And I've read enough books on near death experiences and afterlives from like psychics and people that have had firsthand experiences that I, I can't deny that, right? Like
Absolutely.
even especially when you're reading a book written by a neurosurgeon, like who was a total like science-based
Yeah,
individual, and then he had his near death experience and then wrote about it. Like you can't deny it. Like you
of
have
course.
to. I mean, obviously everyone's has their own beliefs, like which I love
Absolutely.
and respect, but my beliefs are that yes, my soul lives on, and that's I think part of what's helped me accept death
Mm-hmm.
is knowing that yes, my spirit will live on. It's just this is just the vessel
Vessel.
right now. This is the costume I get to wear
Oh, I love that. That's so cute.
for this
Yeah.
lifetime.
I love that. That's so great. I agree. I mean, again, like it's still something that I'm learning, right? And kind of taking in from every experience that I've come across. I
Yeah.
even recently saw a docu-series, I think that's what they're called. Yeah, it's like a documentary, but in a form of a series. And it was all about death and what could possibly, I think it's even called After, or I don't know. I saw it on Netflix, but it was really cool. It was really interesting. And a lot of the people that shared their near death experiences were like parallels, like they were so similar to each other. And they would see, I don't know, it was just so cool. It was really cool that they had, for example, there was one where the individual passed away and they were trying to resuscitate him,
Uh-huh.
and or her, I don't remember if it was a girl or a boy or a woman or a man, but it was this person that was already like dead, didn't have a heartbeat, and they were trying to resuscitate him or her. And he saw everything happening in the room,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So his experience was he was out, his true self, his experience, his soul was outside of his body, and he
Yeah.
was seeing everything going on. And then it took him to like um basically like this beautiful place where he was one with everything, and like he was the leaves and he was the trees and he was the water and he was just
Yeah.
everything. And I got chills, of course. I'm
I'm
getting chills
getting
right
chills
now.
right now when you tell me
Me
because so
too.
many stories are similar to that.
I
Like
know.
as you're saying it, I'm thinking of the Netflix series with Morgan Freeman. It's called like Talking to God or something God.
Exactly.
And he goes through like different countries and religions, but he talks about his own experience
Yeah.
with something like that. So
It's so
it,
similar, right? They're
yeah,
all,
yeah,
that's what really made me be like, this is not something that your brain just makes up, especially when it's dead, like it's gone right now. Your physical body is like off, let's just say, right?
yeah, yeah.
To not use medical terms, it's off, and you are experiencing like a whole new
Yeah,
world.
I knew you were gonna do that.
I had to
I
do
knew
it.
it was coming.
I had to. It was too tempting. I
Okay,
had to do it.
side note, Janelle got me a birthday card that says "Guess what" on the front, and before I even opened it, I was like chicken butt. And her roommate was like, "How did she know?" She goes, "That's why I got it."
That's amazing. That is so
So for
perfect for
those of you
you.
that don't know, me and Ashley have certain things that when we hear certain words, it's just auto. So for her, a whole new word.
I couldn't resist it. It was just part
And
of
I
it.
used to get her all. She'd always say, "Guess what?" And I would say chicken butt every time,
All the freaking time.
all the
It
time.
was so much that to this day she's not physically with me, and even when I'm not on the phone with her or anything, I say guess what, and I hear in my head chicken butt. And I'm like, oh. There's like a space in my brain where Ronnie lives, and she's just there to say chicken butt. And she leaves. And she goes back
Oh
to
my
sleep and
god.
she's like, chicken
Yeah.
oh my god.
Oh,
If only they all knew everything.
right?
But
Oh my
yeah, dude,
goodness.
it really is amazing to me how when the physical body is essentially off, that you experience a whole, your spirit, your consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Experiences so many things that so many other people that have had like death experience where they have died and then come back to life have
Yeah.
experienced. And this person experienced that and then came back and then told the doctors, like, I know exactly what you, I saw this and this, and the
Yeah.
doctors were like, what do you mean? There's no
Yeah.
way. There's no way they could have seen that. Or in surgery, there have been times where people have died on the surgery table
Uh-huh.
and they're still working on them, right? Like they're still closing them up and stuff, and the person is seeing what's happening and they're like, you
Yeah.
use this tool, you use that tool, and they've never been to medical school, they never even, you
Yep.
know, how
Yeah.
do they know these things? They know it because of like going beyond the body, because that's what we,
Exactly.
I believe we all are, is consciousness, spirit
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
just is being housed in this costume, like you said. So
Yeah.
yeah, I resonate with that too.
Yeah. And there's I I believe, at least in talking to my cousin about this before, is that when you practice meditation deep enough, there is a way to actually allow your soul
Oh, for
to
sure.
do that. Like technically it's consciously, because you're consciously meditating,
Mm-hmm.
but you reach this point where you have control of that what's
Separation.
separation, yeah, of
Mm-hmm.
allowing
Yeah,
of your soul leaving and also coming back in.
for sure.
um what was
Even
I feel
astral
like that's what
projection.
the Egyptians did, like when I think me and you have watched documentaries on
Mm-hmm.
why they would lay a certain way and what was written in the tombs as to the
Mm-hmm.
process of how to do it
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. So
Yeah,
I think everyone has that ability, but we've been so brought
absolutely.
down to just accept the physical and only the physical that it's hard to unlearn
Yeah,
all that stuff to learn the other stuff.
exact, especially when it's not the same, like it's so beyond this realm, if you want to
Yeah.
call it that.
Yeah.
It's not like we can make scientifical, I'm so funny. I'm so cute sometimes. What is
Add that to
that?
the dictionary.
Our dictionary, scientifical.
uh,
Scientific data that can say, oh, the soul left the body at this time, and it's not as concrete as
yeah.
what your physical body can say and
Well, there
do.
is research out there. Like I remember Collective Evolution is a website that I follow. They do news articles on like alternative things like that. But
Cool.
there have been studies, um I want to say in Harvard, like some Ivy League schools. Um in fact, recently one that I read about was um people going to sleep. It had to do with the lucid dreaming. I think I sent it to you.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Even the astral projection, right?
Yeah.
Like what you were saying about meditation, which I've experienced many times. But even
Yeah.
in astral projection, the whole what astral projection is that your astral body, which is essentially your spirit body, your energy body,
Mhm. Mhm.
your physical body falls asleep and
Mhm.
your consciousness stays awake, alert, because your astral body travels when you sleep. That's why
Yeah.
you're everywhere at night and you wake up and you're like, whoa, I remembered this dream. But
Yeah.
you don't remember everything because your mind a lot of times is sleepy because it's gone through so much throughout the day that it just needs a break.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't stay consciously aware through your entire dreaming state,
Yeah.
essentially. But when you're astral projecting, you are getting into such a deep relaxed state. Your physical body falls asleep, but your mind is awake and aware. Your
Yeah.
consciousness is awake and aware. So you literally experience your spirit leave your body. Like it's a trippy create, like that's something that really made me like question everything, because you are literally popping out of your body. Like there's
Yeah.
techniques where you're either rolling out of your body or you
Yeah.
pop out of your body. So it's
I'm
like
laughing because I recently experienced I went to bed, and as I was going to bed I was listening to a meditation,
Mhm.
and all I remember is I literally felt like I just went thunk on the ceiling,
Mhm.
and then I felt like I just came back down.
That, yeah, but that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's what it
it was so weird because I was just like, wait, that's the ceiling. Like I literally just went thunk.
But that makes sense because
Yeah.
if you're in such a meditative state that your physical body is like totally heavy
Yeah.
and knocked out, like it's gone, right?
Yeah.
But you're aware because you're like, I'm meditating right now, right?
Yeah.
Which is essentially when you do whatever technique you're doing when you're astral projecting is essentially a meditation because you're either saying a mantra, you're saying like mind awake, body asleep, mind awake, body
Mhm.
asleep, or you're
Mhm.
doing something physical like continuously
Mhm.
until you stop doing it with your physical body, but your astral body continues doing it. So
Mm.
any technique you're doing is purposely so that your physical body goes to sleep and
Yeah.
then your astral body is like, let's go out and let's play, because
Yeah.
it's going to do that anyway, but you're staying awake through the process, so you're going to literally feel that. And it takes like practice for you to like move with your astral body because you're so used to what your physical body feels like that
Yeah.
in that dream state things are a little different, so it feels weird.
Yep.
So it's interesting, like you popping out makes sense and then hitting the ceiling and then going back to your body
Yeah.
makes sense because it's like, whoa, what is this? And then it just goes back to your physical body. It's
Oh my
insane.
god. It is. There's so much we don't know on this planet and in this world. Like it's why like learning never ceases. There's
Exactly.
constantly something new to learn, something new to experience, and uh, once I mean that's exactly what um mind altering drugs do is they allow
Mhm.
you to just fully relax because think about it, we're always in this like go 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 constant state of like not here, the next
Mhm.
place, right? And
Yeah.
so essentially that's what these hallucinogenics and things like that do. They allow you to slow down and just be, and then it just opens up this whole new awareness,
Yeah, there's no
you know.
veils. Yeah, you
But
see
that's why
beyond.
I can see why it can get addicting because it's like, oh wait, I want that, I want more of that, instead of
Mhm.
actually dealing with the things that you need to deal with before
For sure.
taking it in a healthier way, you know.
Yeah. Well, everything, because some hallucinogenics are not necessarily like addictive and they're
Yeah.
good for you. But I
Yeah.
mean, anything in excess is going to be harmful, and I think
Exactly.
it's really important to do anything that you're going to do safely. And if your
Uh-huh.
goal is really to like ascend, then to do it with people that are trained, to
Yeah,
help you,
exactly.
to kind of guide you through it, because they have
Hmm.
so many places now. It's so much more common. There's so many places that's guided, like whether
And
it's
there
for
was
healing.
research in this stuff in the 60s and 70s, but
Yeah,
then they just like the government just put a halt on it. Because I think it
absolutely.
was like LSD, psilocybin, like all those things, which
Hmm.
thankfully now they're making their comeback a little
Yeah.
bit. Because I think DC just legalized psilocybin
Wow.
uh, to be, I want to say, medical use.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they've been proven to help with so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's so much that shows that they're extremely beneficial. And I
Again,
mean, there's no
monitored and in
question.
a
Yeah,
like healthy manner. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with even weed, right? Like there have been
Hmm.
moments in my life where even though it is very beneficial and has so many healing properties, there have been times where I was younger and using it to escape and not using it in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
And the difference of that versus taking it as an adult that's healed is like completely different. So
Yeah.
it does require you using it in a safe way and in a way that's not abusing it. But you're
Exactly.
absolutely right. I feel like there's so many modalities and so many things that allow us to transcend the physical body that really show you. I mean, like it doesn't necessarily mean you can be like, for sure this is true, but you experience it firsthand. So you're like, this
Yeah.
has to be true. Like the
Exactly.
first time that
Exactly.
I consciously left my body and then stayed outside of my body and then grabbed things with my astral body and like moved things, I was like, I remember coming out of that like, why do we even live here? Like, what is this? What? There's so much more. Like, I just want to freaking astral project every single day
Right?
because
Yeah.
I can go to other planets, I can go to other galaxies, like I can go wherever I want, however I want, and not make it up, but just be like taken there. It's very weird and amazing, and I feel like that almost excites me. Not that I want to go tomorrow and die, like, but it makes me interested to know to be able to get to that place where I can experience other things, because I know that there has to be so much more. I think
Oh yeah. Oh
obviously
yeah.
we're not supposed to know it all here, And maybe like I'm pretty sure our soul at our core knows it
Oh
already,
yeah.
but
Oh yeah.
you know, we get back to that knowing, at least I believe we get back to that knowing and then just transcend the
Yeah.
body. And it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I
then at
mean,
the same time, sorry, go ahead.
no, finish what you were saying.
I was just gonna say at the same time, you know, like you're raised knowing about like places, even when you astral project, there are like places that are like lower frequency places. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're vibrationally in a place that isn't like, you know, the highest, you're going to be projected into places that might be scary or might be
Yeah.
like low vibrational dense, where you can feel
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not necessarily in the good place here,
Yeah.
you know, and that happens during astral projection. So I can
Mm.
imagine that maybe that's what could be. I don't know. There's just a lot because you know you're raised heaven hell, but I
Yeah.
see it in a totally different way.
Yeah. I was gonna say when you have movies like Soul, right, that come out, like that's more recent, and I know there's been
Exactly.
more through the years, but like they you don't just create these movies. They come from something. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like there is it had to have come from somewhere.
Right. We always say that. You and I have had this conversation so
Yeah.
many times. Like they didn't just randomly like I mean maybe, but when you think about alien movies, you think about movies about astral projection, about leaving your body, about going to other places. It's like what, you just woke up with this idea in your head?
Right?
Like
Yeah.
that's hard for me to believe. Like you must
Yeah.
know something. You must know that there's more. You know, when I saw Soul, even I was like, oh, these people know. They know. Whoever made
Oh
this
yeah.
movie,
Oh
they
yeah.
know things. You know, it wasn't
Yeah.
just like fantasy creativity. It can be. I can see that
Yeah.
sometimes, but when there's
Yes.
movies, especially when they're consistently made, where the aliens look the same, where the I'm like, yeah, I've seen these things. That's the only way
Yeah. Yeah.
that you know they look like the
And the
dragons.
other thing too, like whatchamacallit, most people when they're on their deathbed, they start seeing their guides or whoever like helping them
I know.
transition, right? Like they'll see people,
Exactly.
loved ones that have already crossed over like years ago, right?
Yes.
So it's like, and then when you read these books and you read the similar stories of like, oh, I saw, you know, my sister that died before I was even born and she was
Yes.
helping, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
you can't, I feel like you can't deny it. Like
I know, right?
you
I feel the
can't.
same way. And again, just like what you said, I completely respect and understand why maybe other people don't
Yeah.
view it that way. But
Yeah.
because of what I've experienced myself living
Yes.
and what I've
Yes.
heard, even my mom, like my mom as a kid and still to this day, she'll literally say, this person visited me. I don't know, feels a little weird. And the
Yeah.
next day they'll pass. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Or even when she was little, she remembers like seeing like a great grandparent or something
Hmm.
walking to a room of the person that then died that same week. So you know,
Wow.
there's like a lot. Or even she's been also in situations where like the person that is passing is saying, oh, look, mira quién está aquí, like look who's here, and that person
Yeah.
that she's saying is here is not physically here because they already
Yeah.
passed. So
Yeah.
it's like all of those things, I'm like, what really can explain it other than
Hmm.
the fact that there's so much more, especially when you hear stories of people that have passed away and come back and
Yeah.
say, I saw my loved one and they said it's not my time yet,
Yeah.
so I came back, right? So it's like, mm, I don't know,
Well,
there's just so much.
and even with reincarnation, I remember reading a book that was written in India, and it was about this little girl who remembered her past life, her previous life. So
Oh my
like,
god, yes.
yeah, so so the stories about her, she didn't talk because once she did start talking, she would talk as if she was an adult.
Wow.
And she would tell her parents like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm married and I'm this and that. And they looked at her like, no, you are here. You're this years old. You were born in this village, not over there. And so she stopped talking. She just
Wow.
stopped talking about it. And then finally, I think when she was around 8, she confided in one of her teachers at school.
Wow.
And so what the teacher did was the teacher looked up this husband that
Oh
she
my
was married
gosh.
to in that other village, and he existed. And he said how his wife passed away and everything like that. And here the wife was reborn in this little girl's body in a completely different village, but she remembered it all. Yeah. So it
Yes.
was
I
like,
heard so many stories like that.
it was such a good book. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it happens. It's not something that like never happens or happens once and then never again. It happens. It's like a
Yeah.
thing that very much happens.
Yeah. And
And
hypnosis will bring past lives out in people's sessions. Like they'll remember
yes.
things of not this lifetime of theirs, but another lifetime. I've heard stories
Yeah.
about that too. Yeah.
Yes. Even in the docuseries that I was telling you about earlier, there was like I think 3 or 4 cases because it's like each episode has a different kind of topic. So like the first one was near death experiences, and then the next one was like talking to spirits. The next one was past life, like basically being reincarnated and
Yeah.
kids remembering who they were before.
Yeah.
And I found that one so interesting because they remember details that were nowhere, and they were kids. They were like
Mm-hmm.
3, 4 year olds saying, I was an actress and I made this and I did this and there was one that was a pilot, and he was like, I was a pilot. He kept having reoccurring nightmares about how he died.
Wow. Yeah.
And so he kept telling his parents, and his parents were like, what do we do? Like, what? My kid is saying all this stuff, and that his name is this, and that's not his name. And then when they do research, it turns out that everything that he said was correct. Like
Yep. Yep.
that's not something that I
That's no
feel you can.
coincidence.
No,
Yeah. There's
no,
no way you can just label that coincidence. Like
no way, bro. Even
it's
you know
beyond
what's
it's
crazy?
beyond.
They took the kid that kept having recurring nightmares of where he died, and once they found out like all the facts of everything that he was saying, they took him to where he died. And then the kid, now being older, said that he felt like it was like a grieving, like he was able to let go and not be
Wow.
there anymore,
Ooh,
like
I
let
got
go of
chills.
his past
Yeah.
life. So then he
Yeah.
didn't have those dreams anymore, but it was almost like
Wow. Oh
for
my God.
closure.
Ooh. Like
Yeah,
literal,
weird, right?
yeah.
It's so crazy. It really is. I find it absolutely fascinating. It's one of those things where the fact that we don't know might feel like scary, but to me, it's like so intriguing and
Yeah.
interesting because
Yeah.
there's so much out there that we can't understand, that goes
Yeah.
so beyond what we can wrap our heads around, that all you can do is have faith in the fact that it's possible, that there
Yeah.
is a lot more beyond our physical body. I feel like
Yeah.
how could you not believe that? I don't know, it's
So, okay,
crazy.
so with that being said, I have a question for you. Do you
Hmm.
think that once you come to terms with understanding that death is a part of life
Hmm.
and you have this faith in this afterlife, what is your take on when a loved one does pass away? Like, how can you foresee, or have you accepted that they're going to leave? And like, I mean, obviously we won't know till we're in the moment how we're
Of
going to
course,
be,
yeah.
but I know me, like I think about it sometimes. I'm like, man, like my parents are getting older,
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's like there are moments where I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I would do if
of
one of them
course.
were gone. Like,
Yeah.
even though I have this acceptance of what death
Yeah.
is, and
Well, yeah,
and
well,
I
I
know
love
their
that.
spirit will be with me whenever I need them.
For sure. I mean, that's such a normal question to have, and such a
Yeah.
normal kind of like conversation that I think everybody has with themselves. Because I think even when you are in this place of, okay, there's so much more, and I know that there's never a time where they're actually gone, right? It doesn't mean that you still have them here with you. So you're still living, assuming that they passed before you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like with my own loved ones, right? I think about
Yeah.
that and I'm like, okay, like I know this, I accept this, even
Yeah.
when it comes to my own passing. But like my mom is my best friend. She's so much
Yeah.
fun. She's like I love her so much. So the thought of her being gone, I'm not going to consume myself with, right? Because I
Yeah.
want to enjoy as much as the time that I have with her now.
Yeah.
But when it does happen, I know I'm going to be completely devastated for a while, just
Yeah.
because I won't have her physically. Even
Yeah.
though I don't know, because I know how my faith is and I know what I believe. Like, I've lost people that mean the most to me, and it was extremely difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
they weren't my mom, but my grandfather passed away, who was like, he's my grandfather. He's who I grew up, and he passed away when I was like 18, I think, or 20.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't like I was still very young. I still already was at a place where I understood death, and it was really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I always feel like he's so present in everything that I do. Like, I even feel his energy sometimes, and we'll laugh. So even knowing that, I think it's important to understand that you're a human being
Yeah.
that will grieve, and that will grieve in whatever way you will, and that will feel
Yeah.
sadness, because we're obviously made to experience sadness and joy and pain.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a little bit easier just because you know that they're never gone, you
Yeah.
know, but they're at the end of the day not physically with you. So it's not
Yeah.
like I can go hang out with my mom the same way that I would now.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
going to be really hard. Absolutely. So I guess to answer your question, yes, it would be a little bit easier just knowing that. I wouldn't probably replay it or think like, is there anything that I could have done, or I wouldn't be
Yeah.
obsessed with wanting her to physically be there, because I know that it was exactly what was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it would still most definitely hurt, just because when it can't just go and be like, girl, guess what? It's not gonna be
Yeah.
the same. What about you?
I I don't know. I sometimes think about it. I've experienced death from a young age, I would say. Like
Hmm.
fourth grade is when I lost my grandma that I was the closest to. And
Hmm.
in that same week we lost an uncle. And and then even when my grandfather died, I was literally next to him in the bed praying
Same.
that he's no longer in pain. And then
Yeah. Same.
seeing the actual physical motion of like the final breaths
Hmm.
and then the body, like just done. So I don't know. I really feel like it depends on the individual and how they're going to respond. I don't know. Like, I sometimes think, am I going to be like this? Or am I going to be like the Ronnie that holds everything together until I'm like laying in bed at night, you know,
Yeah.
and then break down
Yeah.
that way. But you're very right. I agree with you in the sense of we are human and we're going to have an emotional response to something. And part of me is like, is that my attachment to the other physical individual? Like
Yeah.
I practice so much of learning to detach from things that like, am I truly detached from my family? Or is that going to be the final moment of like, nope, you're still attached, girl. You
Well,
know
I
what I
think,
mean?
yeah, but I think sometimes like attachment has like a negative view. I think obviously attachment to where your entire emotions are being dictated, especially while having them in your life,
Yeah.
is not healthy, and why
Yeah.
detachment is so important. But as a human being that was raised by these people, that grew up with these people, that spent time with these people, it's like, of course, you're going to have some type of tie with them. They're your
Exactly.
people, they're your
Yeah.
tribe, they're your community.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not even, I don't think the goal should ever have to be that you have to detach from feeling the loss of them, because that's intense. Like, the
Yeah.
fact that they're not physically there with you is a valid reason to feel grief, or to feel
Yeah.
whatever it is that you feel, because everybody mourns and grieves in their own
In
way. Not
yeah.
everyone does it through like crying. Some
Yeah.
people just deal with it in their own way, right? But I
Yeah.
think that, like, though it's important to practice detachment, I think that you know that they're gone. You'll know because you are detached, and they don't rule over your lives or anything, and essentially manipulate your emotions, or have control over your emotions. You
Yeah.
are detached, but that really has nothing to do with how you will feel as a normal human being that's
Yeah.
experiencing the like transcendence of your loved ones, because they are your community. They're literally
Yeah.
who you've seen and been around for so long, and probably before this lifetime, who knows like how
Yeah.
long you really
Yeah.
have been tied to them. So not having them physically there, even though you'll have them emotionally and energetically and spiritually, is a transition. It's
Yeah.
a thing to
That's a
work
perfect
through.
word for it. That is a transition is the perfect word for it. I think for
Absolutely.
me right now, it's like I want to learn and absorb everything I possibly can from them.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
and it's like I
Absolutely.
dig and ask these questions, but they're so uncomfortable when I ask them because they've never been posed those questions
Of
before.
course.
So
Of
it's
course.
like, no, but I need to get whatever knowledge you have to share with me before something happens.
Yeah, which I love. I love that you're doing that because it really, as uncomfortable as it might be for them, it really is important to you. And I think it should be important to everybody because the reality is that they're not going to be around all the time.
No,
So it's
not
like,
forever. Yeah.
talk to, like, let's have every conversation, even the uncomfortable ones. Let's just talk and fuel me, right? Because
Yeah.
like you're going to have, when they do pass, you're going to have all of that with you. You're going to have every experience, every memory,
Yeah.
and that is intense in itself. The fact that you have
Yeah.
all of this time and energy of them that they shared with you,
Yeah.
that you get to carry with you forever,
Yeah.
like, is amazing. But at the same time, like, totally normal and challenging because
Yeah.
you don't physically have them to ask those questions in that moment anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wow, this topic is so
It's so
interesting.
broad. I didn't even think it would be like when we talked about wanting to talk about death, like I didn't even fathom that we would go off into like the metaphysical aspect of it at all, like, and the fact
Yeah,
that we did it, it just goes to show that it is all encompassing in that way.
for sure. It is much bigger than I think we even
People
know.
realize, yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was thinking about, like, okay, we're going to talk about death. And obviously, I've come to understand that everybody's going to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even, even thinking about like the younger ones, tragic accidents happen too, that anything could happen to anybody. It's not
Yeah.
only like, oh, eventually my parents are going to pass, but like, it could be somebody that I'm literally not ready to lose. Like,
Yeah.
what about if something were to happen to Jayla, and I would freaking lose it because I
Yeah.
wouldn't be, even knowing what I know, it would be extremely challenging.
It's
And
unexpected because we don't tie death with younger tragedies, right? We
yeah,
tie it more to older, you've got health problems and then you're nearing your end, you've lived a great long life, but like
yeah,
when we hear of someone young passing, it's like, oh my God, it's so tragic. Like, how
yeah,
could this happen?
for sure.
But I also think of just the learning I've done in that realm, right? Like in that
Exactly.
if the soul's purpose has lived out what it needs to,
Yes,
then they went when they were meant to go.
for
But
sure. Oh, for sure.
sometimes I'm like, it's hard to say that around certain people because you almost seem insensitive.
Yeah, well,
I
and I
feel
think
like,
that, yeah, and I think that that's why, when anybody is going through something, I think that's why it's important, even knowing what you know, to know
yeah,
what's appropriate to say, right?
exactly, exactly.
Because even if you know something, even I myself, if I know that right
Yeah.
now, but if I were to lose Jayla tomorrow, I would still be grieving
Oh, you would
because,
be devastated.
yeah, even knowing that, yeah, I can totally understand logically and emotionally and spiritually that it was her time. Obviously, if
Yeah.
it wasn't, she wouldn't be gone. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it would be hard. So
Yeah.
if someone in that moment were to tell me, well, it's her time to go, I'm going to be pissed because I'm like,
Yeah.
hello, excuse me. Like, I know that, but that's not an empathetic thing to say, right? Just
Yeah.
like if someone were to lose somebody and they're grieving, I have to respect their grieving process
Yeah.
and empathize with it because I know that they know that death happens, right? I know that
Yeah.
they know that it was their time because otherwise it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's still, because we're human and because we are still losing somebody that is part of a core essential part of our tribe. We're
Yeah.
like, what, who's gonna be here if
Yeah.
you're not here, right? It's still
Yeah.
like a lot for the physical body and for the emotional
Yeah.
body to deal with. So I
Yeah.
think it can come off as insensitive just because, like, obviously people know that death happens and people know that it's the time and life will happen the way that it will.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be challenging just because we're human beings that are living we're spiritual beings living a human experience, and in that
Exactly.
human experience we experience loss and grief, and we're gonna mourn. And that doesn't mean that we're not understanding of the fact that death has to happen and can be so powerful, and ultimately they're transcending into a much better space for them,
Yeah.
right? Even though we know that, we're still living a human experience that is like, but it sucks. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
part of being here, is
Exactly.
losing people prematurely to our own experience. Because if it were up to
Mm,
us, we're like, oh, let's just all be here together until we all die at the same time. But that's not how it works.
no, that, and we have to also understand that like we have however many billions of people on the planet, and every day people are gonna die. Like
Yes.
we can't prevent everyone from dying.
No, absolutely not.
I think that's something that when I think of death now, like I look at it in that sense, because obviously this past year, right? Everyone's
Mhm.
fear was of a
Yeah.
virus killing them.
Yeah,
And it's like, but think of the evolution of humans. Like that's part of it,
for sure. But I
you
think,
know?
like, at the same time, right? Like, let's say people die, but if there was this psychopath, right, that wanted to create a genocide to kill half of the people on this earth, like, we wouldn't want it to happen. You get what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
no,
even though
exactly.
death,
I
right?
Yes, I agree with you
Yeah.
there.
You get what I'm saying? So, like, it's a trippy thing, because though yes,
It
it
is.
happens, it's like you don't want to necessarily, you don't want things to happen to people that cause them suffering when they don't have to suffer, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want, if I can protect myself by freaking being killed by a psychopath, by someone that's like, you know what, I'm gonna kill you just because of the way that you look, like, we're going to fight to prevent that, just because
Yeah.
even though death is a thing and it's gonna happen to all of us, why would we put people to suffer for that, right? So
Yeah.
it's a trippy thing, and it's such a
It is.
complex
It
conversation.
is. It's a very complex conversation. It,
Yes, there's so
and it,
much to it.
ugh, yeah. And it is, it's one of those where you kind of have to be aware of who's around
Yeah,
and what can be said and what cannot be said, because it's in that aspect of what we just discussed, it's a bigger, more complex thing
for sure.
than
Yeah.
just death itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And because it's a challenging thing for people, regardless of knowing the truth about death, it's like a sensitive topic, like, it's
Yeah.
a sensitive
Yeah.
issue, because even though people die, it doesn't mean that I'm okay with my whole family dying right now. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. People die, and I know about the transcendence. I know that there's life beyond. Well, my understanding of things is that there's life
Yeah.
beyond this physical body. But, like, if I can do something to make sure that my whole family doesn't die right now, that would be. I'm gonna do it. So
Yeah.
I think that even if someone else were to experience death, even knowing what I know, I would still be sensitive when approaching it, just because I know the pain that death can cause. Even when you
Yeah.
do know that it's not the end all, like, horrible thing that a lot of people fear.
Yeah.
It's the inevitable, essentially.
Yeah.
It's still something that I personally, that I'm like, well, this is sensitive. If somebody lost somebody, I know that it's a sensitive time for them. It's a challenging time for them, because they're never going to see this person again, and
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
lot to wrap your human mind around, like, the fact that you're
Yeah.
not going to have them. And we can really talk about this forever. There's
Oh,
so
oh my
much.
God, forever. And I think it's also important to reiterate and emphasize the fact that everyone does grieve differently,
Yes.
and to allow people to allow people to feel their emotions,
Yes,
because
exactly.
it is in phases. It's not linear. I mean,
No,
it's
for sure.
and it's important to again be sensitive to the differences in that process.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
so right. That definitely is, I think, something that a lot of people struggle with when they see those that they love. Like, even
Yeah.
friends, I've had friends that have lost their parents at a very young age.
Yeah.
So it's
Same.
like, we want our friends to live. We want the people that we love to live and enjoy life and
Yeah.
thrive. But at the same time, you have to understand that they lost their people at a young, like they're
Yeah.
orphans essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They lost their parents, so
Yeah.
they're on top of like figuring out life and navigating through life. They have to take on so many new responsibilities and
Yep.
grieve, and so whatever way they have to deal with it is the way that they have to deal with it. And
Yeah.
even though you as a person that loves them wants to like rush them out of the grieving process so that they can live and be free, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, live the life that they'd still have, it's still up to them. There's no like time
Exactly.
frame that
Exactly.
is the same for them, and it's not the same for everybody. So
Exactly.
you have to
Exactly.
like respect and honor it and just support them in whatever way they feel comfortable with, and just know that they will get through it and be fine. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that
Yeah.
even when you know, even when you understand, it's just a challenging thing for everybody, and it's
Yeah.
different for
Yeah.
everybody. Like you said, it's not linear.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a deep topic. It's a
It is. It is. It's deep and interesting and confusing and clear at the same time. It's,
Yeah.
to me, very intriguing. Like
Yes.
I just the idea of like what is going to happen beyond this. I don't know. It's like a lot. There's so much that we
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh, totally. Totally. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
Definitely.
We can always talk about this again in the future too.
For sure.
Because I'm sure we'll learn something new by then as well.
Definitely. Oh my gosh, 100%. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. We love you.
Bye.
And we'll see you next week.
This one. Hold on. There
I'm not
you go.
moving. I might start twitching though.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Bye,
Thank you for tuning
everyone.
in.